Kia ora and welcome to another video in this series aimed at teaching you how to play Riftbound step by step, getting you ready for your first Nexus night. This one is going to go a bit further than we have before in looking at the way Riftbound works by actually reviewing the core rules themselves. I'm not going to go into an in-depth review of the rules, but this is a great place for you to go if you're ever curious how things are determined at a bigger level. These rules encompass and are followed by everything from your local TCG all the way up to your regional qualifiers. But the ones that we're going to focus on today are the ones that impact the day-to-day of this game. The best example of those are your golden and silver rules, which are found at the very top of the Riftbound core rules. This is last updated the 16th of July 2026, so it might be very new to you, or it might be very outdated by the time you see this, but it is very unlikely that the golden and silver rule will change, and so these two I can comfortably talk about and will most likely be relevant to the very, very future. First and foremost, the golden rule, the creme de la creme. It is 001. The numbers, it's more just a way to identify what categories they may be under. So you've got 000, your golden rules, or your rulings. 100 are your concepts, and once you reach 200, it'll change into a different one altogether. A lot of scrolling. But in this one, we have the golden rule, and that is card text supersedes rule text. A great example of this is if a card had a way to read how to do movement that contradicted a game concept with movement, you take the card at value over the rules. This is just to avoid there being confusion and contradiction. They're just saying, hey, if there's a chance, go with the card, and we'll update it later. Diana Lunari, great example of that, where the card read differently to how you may interpret it via the rules, and as such, you go with the way the card works. A follow-on to that is the silver rule, which says that if a card uses different terminology than the rules, the card text should be interpreted in accordance to these rules. In other words, use the spirit of the rules when determining what you do. It goes on to say that they are considered cards for the purpose of the rules. Battlefields are not considered cards. However, card is referring to shorthand for main deck, runes, legends. Sorry, main deck cards. Runes, legends, and battlefields are not considered cards when executing. So it goes on to say cards that refer to themselves in the first person. Battlefields say here. Units and legends say I. Gear and spells say this. Cards may refer to themselves by their name for clarity. This is shorthand. So we've just seen that, especially when it comes to Vendetta, with the release of a handful of cards in the red or the Fury domains, such as Consuming Curse, which says I deal 1 bonus damage for each of the cards that has my name in the trash. The next big one is Can't Beats Can. Now, this is a really interesting kind of way to avoid there being indulged abilities in the game, such as cards that forbid actions or events as a broad method supersedes that cards that can. Great example of this is the card Bring Here Thunderstorm. The opponent cannot play, or I think enemies, all opponents, cannot play cards this turn. And then you have hidden cards, which technically you reveal, and in their own wording says when you reveal me, but we treat reveal as play, and therefore if you have hidden cards and Bryn here is played, you cannot reveal them because that is a form of play. Another example is Minotaur Reckoner or Vilmore's Lair. Units cannot move to base. Vilmore goes a little more specific, saying units cannot move from here to base, which supersedes Tide Turner, which says swap the two locations of two units, because that would mean you're doing what is contradicted by the can't. And so that's where we get this from. That's where we get those rules from. Goes on to the next one. When executing card text, do as much as you can, ignoring impossible instructions. If all cards' instructions are impossible, it is still played and resolved, but nothing happens. This is what we call fizzling. And this is where full stops and commas are really important. A great example of this is the card Stupefy. It is a mind 1 energy spell that says reduce a unit's might by 1, draw a card. It is 2 different sentences. They are not requiring the other one to succeed in order for you to do the previous, or the former, or the latter, sorry. If the unit you target with Stupefy is removed from the board by any other means before the card itself can resolve, you can no longer reduce its might, but you still draw one. However, the alternative to that is a card such as Hidden Blade, which says kill a unit at a battlefield, its controller draws 2. Now, if it just said then draw 2, well, A, it'd always be the person who plays the spell that draws 2, but B, it no longer looks for the controller. In other words, it doesn't look for a unit, which means there's no prerequisite. The way that Hidden Blade works is if the unit is removed before the card can resolve, there is no longer a controller for the card to be killing of a unit, and therefore no one draws 2. And so this is what it's saying, where do everything you can unless it is impossible. And in that case, because there is no person to draw to, you can't do it, and it fizzles. Next, cards a player owns may never be placed into a non-board zone belonging to another player. In other words, the new card everyone's beautifully naming Hot Potato, as well as Renata Glask's signature ability, Hostile Takeover, are 2 instances where a card owned by one individual can technically now be controlled by another. However, it is saying that while that may be true, the true owner never changes, and as such, you must always, at the end of the card's existence on the board, return it to the rightful owner, regardless of whether or not it died on your turn or was banished by you. It will return to the same location, but for the controller or the owner's side. So if it was banished by the controller, which is different from the owner, it would go to the banished slot of the owner. This is just to avoid things such as at the end of a game, you have to kind of sift through your trash and determine what cards were and weren't, and just makes it very tidy for everyone involved, just saying, hey look, on the board, we all understand that that's my card, and as soon as it's done, it comes back to me. And that's why I kind of say between these 2 rules, they're very unlikely to change in the near future, if ever, because as a fundamental core of the game, they work. They work in some way or another, resolving 90% of issues that come across the game. I'm going to very briefly then review the next couple slots, which is a 100, which are game concepts. So, well, what is a deck made of? What is a legend? What is a zone? What are battlefields? What are runes? How do you set up your boards? What is known as where? What is trash consider? What is banishment? This one is a little more popular now because of all the new banishment cards, and you can see they've even had to add a note just kind of talking about there's this thing is known as private information, public information, but we don't need into it right now. But if you're ever curious as to why things the way they are, you can come into here and usually actually just go Control F, and let's say you wanted to learn more about move. Well, it's going to take us first and foremost to, that's removed. Let us change that up. We go to 144, which talks about units, and of course, obviously units move a lot. Then we move on to what is declared a move. If we go to movement, we've got locations. We've got there we go. This is what is classified as moves at 420 to 420.3.b. And this is going to be part of the wider concept of section 400, which I believe is mechanics, if I am correct. No, it just carries on. It'll be part of a sub 300 then, won't it? Anyway, but this goes into, as you can see here, a lot of examples on how certain things are resolved. So if another spell or ability attempts to reference the number of game objects units that it fires, it will include any missed, and then it gives an example, such as Volibear, blah blah blah. So if you're ever curious how something may work, go to the rules, go to the core rules, and it will help you a lot in understanding, well, how does the game work? But now that we've reviewed that enough, and you can always find these kind of things at the Rules Hub, which is the on the Riot Games website, or you can search up Riftbound Core Rules, and you go to this website. It will show you all the banned cards. It will give you we've now got an updated 2v2 ban list because it includes the Proving Grounds Master Yi, and then goes into all the patch notes and all the erratas as well. And if you ever feel like it, you can also take the judge's test to get your level 1 certification. But now let's move on to something a little more interesting, which is the development of a deck. Because we've played a whole bunch, and you've seen me sift through a large number of them, and if I actually look at the Akali one, we can see here, might be this one actually. Probably. We can see here, this is the Akali I believe I did use actually in that video. They've recently updated it because now we have a sideboard of 10. And the battlefields have had to be adjusted obviously because there's a few new banned battlefields. But if you ever want to review how a deck is performing, well, that's a bad example, but what things are out there, you can come to Piltover Archives and go to the deck library, in which you'll be treated to a wonderful list. Currently, you'll see there's a lot with this illegal tag, because either such as this one, it was from the Hartford Regional, in which they came first. We can see that the banned card was Arena's Greatest, so if you really wanted to swap this out, and you'd probably be okay. But also it goes into people's own creations. So if you check this button, well actually not check that button, so you go to legality and search up legal ones, you'll be provided a very nice list. And so you can see here, this one by Dan McClure is a Kha'Zix deck that has been regularly updated as of 2 days ago. There was the last update. And it is a really beautiful combination of his own personal play style, but also utilizing Kha'Zix to the greatest extent they can. And for Unleashed, they had a pretty stable list, obviously, and with Vendetta, we're seeing the introduction of Renekton, the Brute, as well as on the sideboard an additional +2, but on the side a Cannon Storm of Shuriken. Otherwise, it's actually just the same list with some fun updates to how it's played, and you can see they go into a large amount of detail. So if you ever want to learn about how a deck works and what goes into really making it, you can see this is a great example of someone who's put a lot of time and effort into it. Actually, if I go to, you can see they've done over now 34 versions of this deck, with 11 of them currently tracked. But even if you see here, you can see the updaters, they just changed the battlefield, but the update before that, they have done some modifications, and sometimes they'll even add commentary onto why they did what they did. If I find here, to remove delete sinners, I'm not priving off utility, so you can see they're regularly updating. Let's say you want to build one now. Well, let's go to the deck builder. You are introduced to this beautiful screen of legends, minus the Teemo. These are all your Origins ones, then it goes into the Overnumbered Origins ones with their signatures, then it moves into the Proving Grounds, into the Spirit Forge with the Spirit Forge Overnumbers, then the Unleashed with the Unleashed Overnumbers, and then into Vendetta with the Vendetta Overnumbers. Now, let's, the two of us, make something. Well, the first thing to do is choose a legend. Between everything, I had a lot of fun with a lot of things. Let us just build a Mel. Mel seems fun. And so clicking on that automatically filters just the Mind and the Chaos domains, which is really nice and handy for us when it comes to having to filter. Some websites such as TCG Arena don't auto-filter, so you do have to sift yourself, but that's okay. When it comes to building a deck, there are two main things I really like to focus on. utilizing the legend and chosen champion, well, primarily the legend, in an effective way that represents what I am wanting to do, which is step 2, what is my win condition? With Mel, she has the ability to reduce a unit's might by 2. I'm first and foremost going to look at Mel in particular as my chosen champion and figure out kind of what I want to do. Do I want to go blue? Do I want to go purple? What does each one provide me? What do I do next? Well, Blue Mel has the ability that when you empower her for 3 energy, or when you play her you draw 1, but when you empower her for 3 energy, all things that would give minus might give an additional -1 might. The purple Mel, don't click that. The purple Mel is no immediate play ability, but on Empower, by discarding a spell, when I become empowered, banish an enemy unit at a battlefield with 3 might or less. That sounds kind of fun. Now it is worth noting that these two, this one here and this Mel here, are both just alt arts much like this. As of Unleashed, alt arts no longer have the full text of what the card does in respect of what empowered means or how do you do it. So you can see here, while this empower says discard a spell, brackets, pay the cost, empower me, use only if not empowered, the alt art just says discard a spell because you're considered to know what it means. This is a lot more understanding if you go to Mel the Legend, because you can see it kind of just tidies up what the deck text look like. And if we go one step further, and we were to look at Kale, hers will look very different across the two as well. Now that we've decided, I think I'll go with Purple Mel. I'm going to right-click her and set her as my chosen champion. We can now decide what the rest of the deck will look like, and because I really like this idea of banish an enemy, what if I search up Banish? What does it provide me? Well, here's a list. Some cards such as Arcane Shift ask you to banish a friendly unit and then play it again. Time Warp banishes itself. Temporal Breach. Banish a unit, play it at the same location, ignoring its cost. Portal Rescue. Banish a friendly unit, then play it to base. That's kind of cool. Well, what about the rest? You have Nocturne for some reason. I would imagine that would be something to do with something or other. You have flow cards such as Dredge. You have Wind and Ghosts, which is choose a unit at a battlefield if it has 3 mod or less, banish it. I like that one. I'm going to put it to the bench. Putting something to the bench means it's not in the deck. I'm considering it later, maybe. Zed, when I conquer, play a unit with a Shadow Clone to your base, which has Banish as part of the part of its ability. You can have multiple Mels, and I think I would load 2 more Mels into my main deck. Let's look at Gust Monk. If you pay the additional cost, banish a card from any trash and give a unit plus unit assault. I like that. I might put that to the bench because that's a really strong way of banishing an opponent's card that they may wish to bring back through Flow or Fizz or Soul Gorger or Glass Mixologist through those processes. So that's kind of cool. Irritative Design has Flow, Twilight Step has Flow, Shuriken has Burn. So I think of the banishes, that's kind of the ones I'm looking at right now. So let's ignore Banish for now, and let's just scroll down the list. We've got a few ideas here, and now I want to talk a bit more about some really core concepts of Riftbound. And that is, in a regular tempo style deck, you will have between 6 and 8 2-cost units. So if I were to filter into an, not an energy, not a rarity, but an energy cost of 0 to 2, we can see here that we've now got a list of every card that has an energy cost of 0 to 2, and we'll even get rid of the power cost, because we don't really want our first turn to be playing a unit and then it immediately deramping us. Well, what are some really common 2-cost units? Because the next thing I want to do is I want to just make sure the unit's not gear, because I want to be able to play it and do something with it the following turn. Some really common ones, especially when it comes to decks that are going to play a lot of spells, is Ravenbloom Student. And I'm actually immediately going to throw 3 of them on, because I might come back to that and go, oh, I'll drop it to 2, but at the moment I like 3. Mystic Poro gives you Vision. Well, I like Vision. I might actually chuck that on the bench and think about it. Traveling Merchant, move, discard 1, draw 1. Possibly. It's always a really strong way to get rid of cards immediately from your hand that you don't enjoy, so I'm gonna chuck that on the bench as well. Teemo, probably not. I don't think I'm going to do a lot of hiding. Tide Turner, same thing. I don't know if I'm going to do a lot of hiding. But I'm also not sure if I'm going to be playing a lot of cards which I want to pull back a lot of. But maybe I'll chuck that in the bench. Forecaster, great if you're playing mix. Plundering Poro, really good one as well. Let's add that to the bench. Overzealous Fan, superb if you're playing a defensive playstyle, but I don't know what playstyle I'm playing right now, so let's bench that just so we can find it quicker. Treasure Hunter, making gold. Well, I don't know if these are going to be really expensive yet. We'll bench it as well. You're seeing we're making a very large number of units in the bench right now, but keep in mind, that's okay, because we can always filter and get rid of these as we decide we don't want them. Windsinger, same thing as Teemo, not really interested. Iceveil Archer, as good as it is, it's not really what we're after. Petal Pixie, nothing with temporary. Keeper of Masks, no, that's a temporary unit. Mr. Root, we're not really doing experience, so I'm not going to worry about that. Now we move on to, lastly, Evelyn. Hidden, kind of fun, but not really interested. Now we move on to the 4 new ones. We've already looked at Gus Monk, which is a very strong way to, as I mentioned, get rid of units in the trash or cards in the trash that you're a bit afraid of. And we've already got that in the bench because it's good for that. Oedipus, superb way to slow the game down a bit and create an opportunity for you to slowly develop. I would imagine for this style of deck, however, we're not going to be too worried about the tempo of it. And instead we're just going to be worried more about maintaining the right number, like the right cards in hand. And so a draw is going to be more of a focus. And when it comes to Patch Porobot, you need to have 3 or more gear to do the draw, so I don't really know about that one, unfortunately. But we have 3 in deck. Let us temporarily bring this to the main deck and actually add another one. So we've got 5 here. I kind of see why we'd want to do this, the Treasure Hunter, over the Plundering Poro maybe, but the one we're going to get rid of that for now. As for the Tide Turner, you know, it's always really fun just being able to drop it and move something around, so you know what, I will move that to the main deck, and I'll actually make it a 2-off. And so we're at 7 here. I'm not going to really worry about the Mystic Poro, or the Overzealous Fan, or the Traveling Merchant. I'm just going to keep these 7, and I'm just going to keep it as is. This gives, I think, about an 89 to 91% chance of finding a 2-drop in your opening hand if you do a full 2 mulligan draw 1 into seeing 7 cards at the start of the game. Now that we've organised that, let us look at the wider list of cards available to us. Well, like I mentioned, the issue that I think a deck such as this will run into is going to be draw. And while we don't have any way to offset the cost of the cards such as Console the Past, we still need for things such as Mill, Defiant Soul, cards that we don't mind discarding a bit later. So I think for now, we will add 3 Consult the Pasts to the main deck, and I'm actually going to bench 3 Falling Comets. Scrolling down, we've got Lecturing Yordle, which is a 3 energy, 2 might with tank. That says when you play me, draw 1. Really nice. I'm going to add that to the bench as well. I shouldn't preemptively put 3 down there, just to keep things tidy. But anyway, we can continue scrolling down. There's Stupefy. Let's just add 3 of those to the main deck immediately. We've got Retreat, which is a really strong way of protecting units, and I think that Mel is something that will most likely we can actually retreat and then play again and empower again to banish another unit. So maybe we can even see some archetyping around returning cards to hand. Singularity, always a really strong spell. Let's add those to the bench right now. Sprite Mother plays temporary, you play it and it makes a sprite really strong, but there's alternatives. Quick and fast, we don't really care about many of these first few units. Progress stage, draw 4, but it's kind of expensive. Is there a way currently that this deck offsets that cost? Not really, and as such, it's just going to be a very expensive draw 4 that we might even just have to discard. So we're going to pause on the Progress Day. Same with the Promising Future. Now, Thousand Tailed Watcher, always a really strong blue choice, and so I'm going to add 2 to the main deck, but we'll see later. Ari Inquisitive gives on to attack or defense an enemy unit -2 this turn, so essentially her ability is Mel's ability. If we were running Blue Mel as our chosen champion, this might be a bit stronger, but as it stands, why do we play a unit when we have a Mel right here that does the same thing, but it is only on attack, might I add, not defense. If we move forward, we can see Seal of Insight, the Teemos, the Time Warp, Unchecked Power. Generally speaking, Unchecked Power is a very strong 1-of in the sideboard, maybe even 2-of in the sideboard. It's just a way to, move to bench 1. So 1 in the sideboard, 1 on the bench, thinking about it maybe going to main deck, because a lot of people will build, regardless of wide or tall units, this clears them out and it clears out everything. Cemetery Shade, play me, return a unit from your trash to your hand. Pretty strong, but I don't think we're going to need that much right now. Ember Monk, don't worry about it. Fight or Flight, banned. Gust, return a unit with at a battlefield with 3 might or less to its owner's hand. Well, funnily enough, if we have Mel at a battlefield, we can actually just use the legend ability to reduce her might by 2, down to 2, and then we can actually just gust her back to hand. So I like that. I'm going to put 3 of those into the main deck. Rebuke, really expensive way to return a unit to its owner's hand. There's cheaper ways currently to do this. Ride the Wind. I'm going to put 2 of these in the main deck because they're a very strong way to go from one battlefield to another battlefield and then return to base on the same turn. If you're the one, obviously it's your turn. Or on the opponent's turn, move your units around in order to protect or attack, depending on what you're after. Size Scout. You may play me to an open battlefield. There's cheaper ways to do it, literally sneaky deckhand, but neither of these cards I'm too interested in. Same with Shipyard Sculptor. These cards do not provide me with as much as I am interested in right now. Acceptable losses. Each player kills one of their gear. We currently have no gear, but this is a very easy, very cheap and affordable gear kill, so let's add it to the bench for now. Fading Memories, gear or battle, give a unit at a battlefield or gear temporary. There's cheaper ways to get rid of those. Pack of Wonders, return another friendly gear, unit, or hidden card to its owner's hands. Let's bench that, because while that is going to be really powerful if we decide we want to do the Mel, by itself it's not impressively overpowered. Stacked Deck, it's a spell. It lets us look through our deck. We like that. We're going to put 3 in the main. Traveling Merchant, we've already discussed. Siren, not going to cover. Now we get on to the rares for Origins. The only one that really sticks out to me that might be worth adding is... Hard to say. Hard to say. Of all of these, I don't think there's any that really stick out to me, unfortunately. I was thinking Nocturne because of stacked deck, but we're not really doing a lot of revealing. Mind Split is really nice if you want to reveal or remove a card from your opponent's hand, but there's kind of nothing I'm wanting to worry about, but I will bench it just in case. Invert Timelines, we kind of like having a lot of cards, it doesn't hurt. Jinx, no, we're not discarding that much. Moving on, Flash. Flash is always a really strong purple card, so I'm going to add 2 to the main deck. Now we move on to the Spirit Forge cards. And this is a fairly long list as well, so I'm just going to sprint through it a bit. Gear, Mech. If you're playing spells in the opponent's turn, pretty strong. It's a defensive ability, only really likes gear, -2 spell, pretty powerful. Let's just add it to the bench for now, because its ability is essentially Mells that you can play on the opponent's turn, and is also Ares, that is a spell, so it's a bit easier to, well, a bit harder to predict. Frostcoat, not really. Wages of Pain, really nice spell that we can also hide. Let's add one of those to the main deck for now, just to... Actually, let's move it to the sideboard, or the bench, just for now. Breakneck, great if you have mechs. Drop Border, we're not running that many gear. Pickpocket, way to kill gear that costs no more than 1, such as gold or seals, so I'm not going to stress about it. Production Surge, it's a nice spell, but we're not going to worry. Rocket Barrage, another way to kill gear or units, but not going to worry about it. On to the rares for Spirit Forge. Of these, there's not many that draw my attention. Premonition is very expensive for what it does, especially because we're not running a lot of gold generation besides the Plundering Poros. So we're not going to stress. And with that, let's move on to Purple, or Chaos for Spirit Forge, in which I'm going to chuck a hard bargain in the bench. We've already covered Windsinger. Fizz is a very impressive, strong Spirit Forge unit, chosen champion. Oh, sorry, champion unit from Spirit Forge. Other than him, though, nothing else really sticks out except Switcheroo, but maybe as like a one-off in the sideboard against very, very large decks, possibly. And we'll add one to the bench to think about it later. The overnumbereds, we're not going to stress about. And now on to Unleashed. Downstage Dramatics is a very quick and easy way to draw, much like Consult the Past. Let's add to the main. We might adjust later. Dramatic Visionary, expensive for a predict, not going to worry. Eclipse, -4, pretty strong. 1 to the main. We'll see about it. Fate Weaver, we're not going to be playing that many spells that cost 4 or more. We only have 4 in the deck right now. Everything else is quite cheap. Ice Veil we've covered. Moonlight Affliction, give a unit -10 this turn. That's pretty insane, but also very expensive. Ruined Rex, Spectral Centaur, Sprite Burst, bench it. Turn to Dust, nice way to kill gear. We'll add it to the bench. Chakram Dancer, ambush unit with shield. Well, gives other units here shield. Pretty strong, but not going to worry. Crescent Strike, choose a battlefield and an enemy unit there, deal 4 damage there, and any other unit there. Oh, each other enemy unit takes 1 damage. Pretty strong, but I don't know. We'll have to see about that one. Let's bench it maybe. Deadly Flourish. You can deal damage to a unit anywhere, regardless of it's a battlefield or a base. I always like this one, but that's because I like Jin, so we'll give that a pause. The next few, not really that interesting. We don't play enough tokens for the Soul Shepherd to be worth it. Now we'll move on to the rares. Hui is always a really fascinating one, especially if you have cards such as Ride the Wind, and as such I'm going to bench one just to remember. We've got Sprite Queen, which is the arguably better version of Sprite Mother, where instead of just on play, it's when you play her and at the start of every beginning phase you play a Sprite readied. Some Quirks map, we don't really want to hope that the opponent is scoring a lot, so we're going to not play that. Zillion, once each turn, if you would play a token unit while I'm at a battlefield, you may play that token additional copy as well. Blue Sentinel, we're not really going to be going for that many effects. Gutter Palace, we're definitely not going to be triggering. Jin is a very cheap way to play a unit, because technically if you've played a 4-cost spell, you only pay a power. But as I mentioned, we're only playing 3 4-cost spells at the moment. And there's only the Downstage Dramatics, which you have 2 copies of, which can be repeated for 4. So, LeBlanc requires a lot of temporaries, so And now we move on to Unleashed, and this is the card that I really like the idea of, especially when it comes to this whole Mel Banish thing. It's Bewitching Spirit. When you play me, choose a player, they discard 1. If we add 2 to the main deck, that way we have the Bewitching Spirit and the Mells as options to get rid of the opponent's cards, units, in a way that they cannot get back again. And especially paired with the ability of maybe bringing now in the ability to, such as, not that one, Gust Monk, to banish a card from the trash, this combination of Gust Monk and Bewitching Spirit, quite strong. But we'll see. But at the moment, that's what I was really linking my thinking to. Next, Lunar Bloom, strong way to do draw. Maybe bench it for now. Megatusk experience, no. Mr. Root experience, strong, but he's a 2 energy that you can accelerate for 1 energy, 1 power, so I'm not too fascinated by him. Starcrossed is the other way of doing Rebuke, because it's a 3 energy, 1 power. It's technically more expensive, but also less expensive, because it ramps you less. And this says return a friendly unit and an enemy unit to their owner's hands. So once again, a very strong way to do some really interesting combinations. And let's add 2 of those to the main deck for now. Vicious Snapjaws is experience. Walking Roost, big for what it does, but okay. Abandon, way to counter a spell. 1 to the main deck, 1 to the sideboard. Pretty strong combination there. Maybe even remove the 1 in the main deck and put 2 in the sideboard. We'll see. Actually, I'll do that immediately. Remove, and then another 1 to the sideboard. Angler Beast. When you play me, return all units with 2 less might to their owner's hands. This card here, you add to your sideboard, maybe even twice, purely for Swarm decks. It counters recruits, it counters birds, it counters token units such as the new one Shadow Clone and Tentacles, because all of those, they can't be returned to their owner's hands, and as such will actually disappear. It's also a very strong way at 5 energy, 1 might to get rid of things such as a lot of 2-drops, a few hidden cards such as Teemo. It's a quick and easy way, I'll actually even add 2, it's a quick and easy way to just destroy the opponent's position if they're doing a hold style with a lot of small units such as Swarm decks. Blast Cone, not really. Existential Dread, great stun card that you can repeat for 2. So we'll add 1 to the main deck and maybe 1 to the sideboard for now. That'll be adjusted, like I said. We're already up to 39 in the main deck and we haven't even reached Vendetta yet. So can expect a lot of this to change as we go. Insightful Experience, Scryer's Experience, Sinister Poro, not really. The List, great if you know the tags, but we're not going to worry about it. Bone Skewer, great way to see the opponent's hand, but we're not going to worry about it. Maybe we'll put it in the bench to be looked at later. Conscription is Experience. Evelyn's essentially Purple Charm. Headless Resurrection, not really interested in this. We saw it in the Cannon, or the Z, I forget which one, but we're not going to worry about it here. Kazakh's Experience. Muldali, really strong, but he's expensive. Pike is when a unit dies, you make a gold. Enemy unit dies, sorry. Syndra has the ability to give all spells repeat, but we're not really interested here because it's only during showdowns and she's expensive. Baron Nashor, very nice purple unit, but also very expensive, and in this deck we're not really interested in that. The only other one I'm really interested in here is actually Vex as a very strong standard card to have. Maybe even 2 copies, 1 in the main and 1 on the side, but we'll move that and make an extra in the bench. She's just a very strong card overall, because her ability is when she's in a battlefield, units come in stunned, which make ambush units useless. We finally get on to Vendetta. Apprentice Mage, great way to see, but we're not too stressed. Cloud Drake, very expensive for 1 draw. Dredge Up, it's essentially the same thing as upstage or downstage Dramatics, but you have to do it in 2 triggers rather than 1. And because we currently have no way to reduce the cost of flow, we're not going to worry about it too much, but I'll bench it just in case. Grumpy Rockbear, huge unit. I cannot go but bench him because he is such an amazing unit. Irritative Design, spell that plays a mech and has a flow cost. This would be a very good option to discard with Mel, same with the Dredge, because you can still use it once you've benched it, or trashed it. Mesmerize, give a unit either -2 or return a friendly unit to its owner's hands. That is phenomenal. I'm actually going to add a play set to the bench, just for that. Oedipus we talked about. Questionable Tome is a gear, that's more of a ramp, but yeah, I'll bench it just in case. Apply to Researchers. Strong, it makes our spells cost less, but as we talked about, we've got a lot of cheap spells to begin with, so I'm not going to stress about it too much, but I'll bench it because you never know. Clairvoyance, Predict 5, insanely good card. I never realized how powerful this actually was. I've already kind of benched it in my Jin deck in the hope that I can make this work in a pseudo promising future-esque style in which you get to look at the top 5 and essentially play to, or draw to in this case. Promising future, obviously you can ignore the energy cost of the card. This does not, but nonetheless, still powerful, very powerful. Covert Informant. It's a draw engine. We like draw engines. It's essentially Stellarcorn Herder when empowered. I'll bench it, but I'm not too. I'm not thinking too highly of it. Patch Porobot, no. Shock Blast. If a unit's empowered only, it's a 1/1. Kind of powerful. Let's add that to the bench. Scry Cruiser, discard a gear. We're not playing a lot of gear. Decree of Insight is a strong counter to body decks, so we'll bench that as well. Hextalk Formula, enters exhausted, empowers gear, not too stressed. Same with the Nasus, same with the Plaza Guardian, same with Swain. Temporal Breach, banish a unit, then its owner plays it to the same location, ignoring its cost. It's really important to note that because it's technically banished, when it disappears, it doesn't go to trash, it goes away, and so while you might initially think that this is a really strong 2-energy way to return Mel to hand and then play it again, once it dies, it's gone forever, and so there's a positive and a negative, but we'll bench it anyway. Bottled Consolation, way too weak for what we want to do. Mel we've already talked about. We may put one in the deck, but I'll bench it for now because we have such a large number of minuses, such as Stupefy. We have in the sideboard, we've got Mesmerize, we've got Frigid Touch, we've got, I was about to say Crescent, no. But we've got quite a few here already, but I'm not holding my breath. And the last is the Chaos for Vendetta. Kinku, very strong with ganking, but not really what we're after. Mask Mother, when you discard me, we're not doing a lot of discard. Shadow Disciple burns things, we don't have a lot of flow, so that's pointless. You cost 2 less for each card with my name in it, we're not going to be running a lot of these. Spiderling, definitely not. Stargazer, we don't have a lot of flow. Tornado Warrior. When you play me from face down, you may empower something else here, disempower at the end of your turn. Strong, but we don't have a lot of empowers that do that. This could be a really strong mechanic between hiding it at Mel's battlefield and then on the opponent's turn revealing it in order to empower the Mel rather than discarding a spell, and then banishing an enemy unit at a battlefield with 3 might or less on attack. So because of that potential interaction, we'll bench it. From the deep, Tentacles, we're not playing a lot of token units, so we're going to stress. Gus Monk's already there. Ravenbloom Prefect is a way for when an opponent plays a gear, you may banish me to banish it. It's a selective way to kill gear, which is very nice. You can force the opponent to really just kind of not want to play any gear. Shadows of the Past, return up to 2 units from trash to their owner's hands. Strong, but I'm not worried. Tailcloak Matriarch, 4 energy, 4 power. 4 energy, 4 might with an empower, 2 energy, 1 power, yep. When it becomes empowered, you may choose a unit in the trash with, so it's essentially Glass Mixologist, which is quite strong on empowerment. But we're not going to stress because of that selection we have our 2 costs, our 2 costs, and that's about it right now. Yeah. Twilight Step. Move a unit with 3 might or less. Gonna bench it because it doesn't specify it has to be a friendly. And so there's a mechanic where you can move a unit for Twilight Step, and then you empower the Mel in order to banish that unit. So that's kind of cool. Decree of Discord, return any number of enemy order units with a total might of 5 or less to their owner's hands. Not as strong as the Decree of Insight, but we'll bench it just in case. And onto the last stretch. Mina Swiftfoot. When I move to a battlefield, choose one. Each player draws or discards. Nah, we don't want the opponent to have fun. Zed, we've already talked about, not going to worry about him. Kennen, burns and conquers. You can play. You give a unit a spell from your trash flow. We don't like the burn, we like our hand, we like to control the process, and that's why we've got so many discards. Korax. When I become empowered, choose an opponent, they burn 3, you may do this, choose a unit from their trash and play it, ignoring a cost. We're not going to really worry about this as the mechanic, because that's very expensive. That would be really nice to pair with Tornado Warrior as a way to freely empower, but we're not going to stress. Now, Ocean Drake, I like the idea of this, of being able to play it to an open battlefield, and you may return a non-dragon unit to its owner's hands, but it's very expensive, and like we talked about, we're not playing huge units, we're here for more spell-based control. And the last one is Mel's signature spell, which I will bench, which is you may choose a spell with an energy cost of no more than 4 energy. You may pay 1 power. If you do, gain control of the spell, and you make new choices for it. But if you didn't pay the 1 power, you counter it instead. So this is a really fun 1 energy, 1 power, maximum 2 power, but it is limited by the same mechanics as Defy, so you can't take huge spells and counter them. And with that, we have completed our initial selection, and we get to move over to our beautiful bench and our sideboard and make some decisions from here. Reset that. So, what have we got here? We've got currently in our main deck 39 cards. The fastest way to cull things is there already something that you think shouldn't exist in the deck, or there's too many of that should have another spot? First and foremost, we don't need 3 Stipifies. Remove 1 of them. Same thing with Retreat. I think running 1 of them is quite strong. Gust, running 2 is also quite powerful. Stacked deck lets us see these cards faster, so that's why we don't need as many. A 1 copy of Existential Dread. We've already got 1 in the sideboard. I'm going to remove it. Downstage Dramatics, running 2. It's okay. Same thing with Flash. We've got our 7 units. Ride the Wind, 2 copies. Bewitching Spirit, we've got 2. Maybe bumping to 3 would be quite nice. Eclipse, after all of these other minuses, I don't think we're going to run this anymore. Starcrossed, absolutely. Consult the Past, reduce it by 1 down to 2. Mel, we're not going to run 3. We're just going to run 2. And we've reduced our main deck down to 31. Thousand Tail Watcher, move 1 to the sideboard for now. Sideboard, we've got 2 Abandons, a Switcheroo, and Unchecked Power, 2 Angler Beasts, which are very strong, and an Existential Dread. I don't think we're going to need to run the Existential Dread, but I'll keep it there just temporarily. Acceptable losses, how many ways do we have to kill gear? Well, if we run an acceptable losses, we don't have to run Turn to Dust, so we'll move Turn to Dust. Do we have other ways of killing gear at the moment? Well, we did just put in Ravenbloom Prefect, which is, although a bit more expensive, would require us not to have kill our own gear, which is, if we're playing Pack of Wonders, definitely a fair, so get rid of that. Decree of Insight, great on the sideboard, so we'll move it to the sideboard temporarily. Decree of Discord, now we'll get rid of it. The 3 Mesmerize, well, Mesmerize fills the same position as Frigid Touch, for technically a bit cheaper, so remove the Frigid Touch. Mesmerize, being able to return a unit to its owner's hands, also fills in the same position as Retreat and Gust. Its limitation is just that it costs 1 power as well as just 1 energy, so if we remove 1 of these each, because this Gust is still really powerful as a way to return an enemy unit to its owner's hand, and we insert to the sideboard to the main deck 2 of those and remove 1. Rebuttal, its limit is Defy, but it's a blue-purple Defy, and so if we add that to the main deck, we can see it might be worth... leave it as at 1 at the moment. We'll see how that goes. Dredge, not going to be worried about it right now. Gust Monk, kind of the same thing, where it's strong, but it's not as powerful as we want it to be. Hard Bargain, great sideboard option, especially against spell-based decks, but we're not going to stress too much about it right now. Pack of Wonders, we like the idea of what it wants to do, and so we'll put it in the main deck temporarily. Bone Skewer, however, we're going to remove. Temporal Breach, we talked about the reasons that we kind of might not like it, and so we're going to remove it. And Twilight Step, we are going to put in the main deck temporarily. A 2nd copy of Switcheroo, I think we're not going to add. And Lecturing Yordle, if we look at our unit numbers, we have at the moment 12 units into 20 spells, and that's a pretty good ratio when it comes to these types of decks, because we've got 2 of our chosen champions, we've got the 2 costs, and we have the Thousand-Tail Watcher, but I think we could do with a few more, so we'll add 1 to the main deck, and we'll add... where is Lecturing Yordle? There. We'll add another one to the main deck, just to keep things a bit more friendly, I guess you could say. Lunar Bloom, not going to worry about that anymore. Same with the Questionable Tome. Ravenbloom Prefect, however, we add to the main deck, and we will add another one to the main deck. Tornado Warrior. It could be a way to... the interesting thing here is it says that you empower and then disempower, which means that technically if the Mel was empowered, you can, even if she was already empowered, you just do it empowered again, and then it disempowers at the end of the turn, and then you can empower her again. So I will add her to the main deck temporarily, and we'll see how it goes. Wages of Pain. We're going to remove, because we don't need to deal the damage. Same reason I'm actually just going to preemptively remove Deadly Flourish. Covert Informant. We've got ways to draw. It's a unit though. So do we want to substitute Covert Informant for something alternative? Maybe we'll get rid of the Downstage Dramatics. Maybe both of them, in order to add 2 Covert Informants to the deck. Well, I see that as an option. Covert Informant. +1. Crescent Strike, after everything else we're not really worried about. Fizz, we've got a lot of spells that would like to play from trash, which makes him a very fun card, and we'll add him to the main deck, and we'll even consider a second one. Now the real question becomes, we're at 40 again. We are going to pause here, and we're going to say, what here could be removed? Well, without playing the deck, it's really hard to say. Part of me thinks that we don't need to add these Lecturing Yordles. Another part of me is saying, no, you need to get rid of the Twilight Step. What do you do from here? Well, sometimes you just have to test. And as such, we will now go to the battlefield stage and finish up the pre-rune, I should say. We'll finish the last step of this, which is what battlefields do I think I would like here? First and foremost, Abandoned Hall is going to be a very good friend of ours because we're playing so many spells. It says when you would play a spell to a unit they control here, give it +1. Another one may be Star Spring, because if you play a unit, you may return another unit here you control to its base. Pretty strong. And the last one may be Threshold of the Grey. When combat starts here, the attacker and defender each add 1 energy. The reason for that is because that essentially makes Gust free, Stupefy free. It makes Rebuttal just 1 power, Stacked Deck free. It reduces the cost of so many of our options that it's a great option. Now, there is this beautiful button here called Auto when it comes to the final stage of this, which is runes. But I'm going to go over the way that rune economy works. The way that you organize it yourself without help from the system is you have to first identify what cards you currently have that use power. Through this, you can see that of the 40 cards that we currently have, there is 16 Chaos and 11 Mind, so 27 of them that cost no power. Then it's 8 Chaos and 6 Mind. So of the 14 cards, it's almost a 6-6 split. If we auto, this might go to 7-5. Yep, 7-5. Because it's saying, you know, you've got a few more purple, but it's still not enough to overarch the issue going on here. Now that we're happy enough with this as a first test, we'll say this is Mel Test 1. And say it is, we won't even give it a description, we're just going to put this in our own draft and we're going to save it. And what you can do from here is you could build this, you could take this to a local, it is legal, as you can see here. And then as you play, you make notes, you say what worked, what did I really like seeing in my hand, what did I hate seeing in my hand, what did I wish I had more of, what did I wish I had done differently, and you start to build organically a viable way for you to enjoy the game. And at any stage, you just come along, you add matchups, you add guides, and all of a sudden, you now have something that you can be showing off to people and go, hey, look, this is the cool thing I built. What do you think? And they might say, cool, I really like that. Or they might say, no, that's rubbish. But the next step for us is we are going to take this beautiful Mel deck we have designed together. We're going to take it over to TCG Arena, and we are going to fairy play some games against some current decks out there as well. But that will be for the next video. As of today, I will catch you guys in the next one, eh?